Yeah.
The people like your videos. So anyway, are not your videos, but your happy face is marvelous. We need more happy faces on the internet. Okay, so um, the first thing that we were talking about is how organizations make things more difficult than they could be for the clients because they really don't want to give the services that they're employed to give because it's too much work. So that gives us as clients the added, let us say, um, job to do is not only to jump through the hoops that they want us to jump through, but to do it happily. That we can see this almost as a workout and we're going to the gym. Instead of the employment office, we're going to the gym. And when we go to the gym with the mentality is that I'm going to build up these muscles even if they get a little bit tired while I'm doing it. Okay? So we can think of going into the employment office that way also. That this is just something, okay, I can handle this too. Yeah, I can go to the gym and I can work out.
Mhm.
I can do some heavy lifting. If you can lift up and enjoy carrying around the employment agency, then you're getting pretty strong.
Yeah.
Okay. And so then the attitude then is that no, it's really a lot of work and I would rather feel good than go through the process of jumping through their hoops and doing all the stuff that they want and I can do without the money.
Mhm.
Right?
Yeah.
Well, basically the point is that if uh, according to the government system, you're entitled to that, and that you would want to be abiding by the correct procedure, even though the workers at the unemployment office, it's still absolutely okay for you to get the benefits that they have.
Mm.
That in fact that will assist the holy life.
Mhm.
So in that regard, we can say, all right, maybe we can find a way so that I can have both the good feelings and the benefits of the unemployment,
Mhm.
rather than trying to make a choice between the two.
Mm. Yeah.
But it's kind of like going to the gym.
Mhm.
And so now let's say, how do we actually begin to do that? And the answer is, of course, that you brought the point up, is that it is the feelings of annoyance or the feelings of not liking that bring up the rage,
Mhm.
especially if we have had rage in our past,
Mhm.
right?
Mm.
So if we've gotten angry and sometimes when we get angry, we get our way and then we remember that. So now we get a click, okay, it's okay to get angry because I get my way when I get angry. Guess what? Not at the employment office.
No, exactly. I know that.
and and knowing that there's no advantage in being angry at the employment office, we need to become mindful. And now what are we mindful of, or what is our intended object, is to watch out for these little annoyances that start. Watch out for the I don't like it's.
Mm.
Okay, so when they hand you the document back and says you didn't fill this part out, you can say, "Oh, thank you for pointing that out to me.
I
Uh,
actually did
I'm
that.
really happy."
I did that and I thanked him too. Yes.
All right, so see,
But
you're already underway.
but but I wa-
But
I
he
may
did
not
get you down finally, I bet. He
I
found a way.
I may not have been too happy about it actually, really, but I tried to. Yeah.
Well, when we recognize that if we are mindless at that point of contact when that annoyance arises, it will go the way that it has always gone, which is by habit. Some people will slink off saying, "Oh, poor me. I didn't deserve it anyway." Okay, but that's their style. What I mean by style, that's their habit, or that's the way that they've done things before.
Mm-hmm.
But you have an element of rage. But there is references, by the way, in the sutta that the people who have an angry mentality and those who have an intellectual mentality are very, very bound close together.
Uh-huh.
Because the one who is angry can already see things and they see that they need to be fixed. So there's a certain amount of intelligence that comes along with people who have anger issues.
Okay.
Okay, because you can see what's going on, and the guy who slinks away, he just thinks it's all his fault.
Mm-hmm.
And he's not able to see things clearly, you see. But us angry folks, we can see that they did it to us.
Okay.
And that, but with compassion, we can begin to see why.
Mm-hmm.
That on one occasion, at one time, I began to think that the one officer at the immigration office that I went to didn't like me. But then I quickly figured out, no, what it is that she knows me, and she knows that I've got a retirement visa, which is at least 20 pages of paper that she's got to sort through, verify, and make sure are accurate before she gets her boss to look at it.
Oh,
So when she sees me, she's not looking at me. It's not me she hates. It's the fact that when she sees me, I'm bringing her a whole lot of work to do.
yeah.
And when I figured that out, then I didn't have to feel like that she didn't like me and I have to deal with that. I understand directly. And so I'm going to do everything I can to make her job easy for her
Mm-hmm.
before I get up to the desk, because before I would see her huffing and puffing and shuffling papers around and all of that kind of stuff. And that's because I didn't really understand that she has to put them in a certain order.
Mm.
And so when I understood that, then I found out what that order was, and now I would present her the documents in the order that she would prefer, and that kind of thing. Okay, so basically what we're looking at is how to see things with compassion. Begin to look at how the officers in the unemployment office, what their routines, what their expectations, and all of that kind of stuff, so that you can make their job as easy as you can.
Mm.
Because by doing so, um, you make you make your life and theirs easier too.
Yeah.
This is the aspect of compassion. But if they see all the work that you brought them to do and have the compassion of getting into the same feelings that they're into, that may not be useful. By the way, your video has cut off, but I don't know why. Can you turn your camera on and off and see if that improves something?
It says that it's still recording.
Yes? Okay, there we go. Thank you.
Okay.
Now I see it's a Skype problem. Never mind, I understand now.
Uh-huh.
Okay. In other words, I can see your image in the little thing, but when I go to click on the big Skype window, it just shows a blank. So I can see that it's an issue of Skype, but I can still see you, and so I know that the light is on, that it's still recording.
Okay.
So we'll just continue on.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So um, the the way or the style that we begin to go with is this thing that we would call a very noble way to make sure that we're making things really easy and smooth for the bureaucrats, because their life is tough.
Mm.
And if you don't believe them, ask them.
Yeah.
And that way you can actually enjoy the day.
Yeah. Yes.
And you can win the solution and get the money also.
Yes. Actually,
But we have to deal with that point of contact when that unpleasant feeling or that disliking comes up, that it has to come up wisely. So we have to have sati. Because
okay.
if we don't have that wisdom, if we don't have the wake up to watch what's going on, then when we feel bad, it will naturally continue along the old path, the old habits.
Mm-hmm.
And for you, you're going to strangle someone to the floor.
No, no, I'm
Not
very
quite that
kind.
far.
I'm very kind.
Okay, well, not you, but you can see how that would be possible if somebody would
In my
stay that
head,
asleep. But
I've
yeah,
been
in your head.
things a lot in my head through my life. I may not actually have done things, but it happened in my head. So many things. Yeah.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, if you'll go back to that sutta that you and Chatan did together about right thought, number 19 in the Majjhima Nikaya,
Mm-hmm.
you'll remember that abhimsa,
Yeah.
the thoughts of nonviolence,
Yeah. Yeah.
rather than the thoughts of violence. So when we don't get what we want, we will
Yes.
have thoughts of violence.
Mm.
And the thoughts of violence is the only thing that will lead to violence. Thoughts of non-violence doesn't lead to violence.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I thought I was a very kind person nowadays, but I can see how this happens still. I became very aware of it now. So yeah, it's still there.
Well, we all do that. There, everyone walks around with an anger button exposed.
Mm-hmm.
In the
Yeah.
sense, if you make me feel bad like this, you punch that anger button and you will
Yeah.
get anger out of it. Everybody is capable of that. You're
Yeah.
not the only one.
I've been thinking more of it as fear. I've been thinking it's about fear, but
Exactly so.
mhm,
Exactly so. It's not really anger at all. It's, in fact, what covers the anger, or you could say it this way, the solution to the fear is to defend yourself
yeah.
against it,
Hmm.
a la
Yeah.
fighting with it.
Yeah.
There we go. That's the whole show.
Yeah.
All right. So if we recognize the fear directly, then with wisdom we recognize that we don't have to defend ourselves,
Yeah.
because in fact it just, the example we're using, the employment officer really doesn't care about you at all. He's not giving you a hard time. He's just having a hard time with his work.
Yeah. Yes.
And that you're really not there. So therefore there's no reason for you to feel afraid, because it's not you that he is being grumpy about.
Mm.
It's the work that you brought for him to do.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
we can't make a distinction sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Even the officers themselves can't tell the difference between you and the work that you brought him to do
Mm. Yeah. Right.
until you make that distinction yourself. And a way of doing this is, I'm really sorry that I've given you all of this work to do,
Mm.
but
Yeah.
it's really not mine. I mean, I'm only doing or giving you this work because it's required by the government, and then
Yes.
you're off the hook. But otherwise, he can't see that, just
No.
like we can't. When we go in there, we think the paperwork is me.
Yeah.
All right. That is where the whole idea of selfishness or self comes in, that is so derogatory,
Mm.
because we can't tell the difference
Mm.
between ourselves, who we really are, and some object of our interest in the moment. Like
Mm.
that would be some paperwork,
Mm.
more than likely. Certainly at the visa office, that's the whole show, is paperwork. About 20 pages of it. So uh, the paperwork is not you.
No.
You are not the paperwork. If that's the case, now when you feel the fear, you can tell yourself, wait a minute,
Yeah.
maybe the paperwork is in danger,
Yeah.
but I'm good to go. It's not me that's in
Mhm.
danger, because you're not really ever in danger. I mean, really,
No.
nothing really ever happens in an employment office.
No.
Not anything that's actually dangerous.
And now it's in distance too. It's we don't actually have to go there. I sit behind the computer and do it, or the phone or something. So it's not even physically dangerous at all.
Wow, technology. The last time I was in an employment office, it was a really place. It was a real place, and it was
Yeah.
scary.
Yes. But not now with Corona and everything. One doesn't even have to go there.
And and if everyone is wise, people may not ever have to go there again.
Mm,
They didn't need that building now that the internet. Let everybody continue doing it on the internet.
yes. Yeah.
And in fact, while Bank of America is raking in huge profits,
Mm,
they're closing down their offices
yes. Yeah.
because they don't need them anymore.
Hmm.
They're destaffing, and
Yeah.
now we've got this huge building. Why don't we give the lease back to the owner of this building that we told him we'd keep it for 30 years? But sorry, guy, I'm only going to keep it the 5 I've had it, and
Yeah.
I'm out of here. And they're doing that all over.
Mm,
Why? Because online banking. And so if we could online banking, we could online voting, we could online employment office, we
yeah.
could online anything that the government has to do if the government would automate the way that the businesses are being forced to automate because they can make more money at it. To
Yes.
where the government is not forced to automate because the individual workers don't have any incentive to do the automation. They've been doing it the same way they've been doing it over and over and over again.
Yes. Yeah.
So
Mm.
that that automation really helps at that level. That way, when you start to get afraid or unhappy, you can just close the lid of the computer and take a walk.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
And be mindful and say, wow, what a beautiful day. I think I'm happy enough if I can go open that computer again and finish that document I've got to do for the employment office.
No. Yeah. It froze. The screen froze. I didn't hear you. What the last thing you said?
All right. Uh,
The last
is it
sentence.
is it is it frozen now?
No, no, not now. The last sentence you said.
Okay. Uh,
But
I was just making a joke. Never mind.
okay. But I don't get them anywhere. Anyway, always.
Yes, you do. You get jokes better than most people.
Yeah.
See, you just got that one.
Yeah. Mm, yeah.
All right. So, um, you had other questions that you
Well,
wanted to talk about. I think that we've gotten the trip to the employment office
yeah.
nailed really by Paticca Samuppada.
Yeah. Now I feel even happy about it. I got out of it, so it really helped. Yes, it did. Mm-hmm.
Right. If we can figure out how we feel before we use that feeling in the old style with wisdom, we can decide, hey, I don't have to feel that way.
Yes.
I do not have to be angry. In
Yes.
fact, I'm really happy that I saw that feeling of not liking.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so my new feeling is I like that I saw the not liking feeling.
Yes. Exactly. Yeah.
And so it's actually an easy thing. The hard part is to wake up, the
Yeah.
sati,
Yeah.
to be awake, to be aware.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Sometimes I feel there is something disturbing me, but I cannot figure out what it. I don't really know what it is, what to do with it, how to, I get stuck in there. It's when I realize, like when you say those things, when I realize that, then it becomes some kind of aha moment, and then things falls into place. So it's kind of, otherwise my mind starts spinning around it, and I don't really know what to do with it.
All right. Well, let me keep you in on this one that I've just recently seen a translation, a new translation that I hadn't seen before of a Pali phrase that I knew. And he translated it as inspiring, like hearing the Dhamma, and it is inspiring. Or noting that negative thought or negative feeling, the not liking that comes up. And then we recognize, oh, I can see that. Isn't that marvelous? That's inspiring. And that inspiration is what then brings up that good feeling.
Yes.
It's like, aha, I caught you.
Yes.
Is that moment of inspiration. Or they can also refer to that as the vipassana itself, or the insight.
Yeah.
In the sense that it strikes us, or, aha, I see you.
Yeah. Yes.
And so that inspiration is a good word to use for this event, because if we have inspiration, then we have the feeling of satisfaction. Now I've got it.
Yes.
Now I understand, and now I know what's going on.
Yeah.
Okay. And so that also eradicates doubt.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, then I can just leave it. I don't have to bother with it anymore. Yeah.
Well, that's it. Actually, what you're saying is, now that I have swept the floor of the mind, I don't have to sweep anymore.
Yeah, but well, it comes back. I know. I know that.
Well,
but for the moment,
not for a while. Not for a while.
Yeah.
Not until the next time I have a form to fill out at the employment office, and then we got to sweep it out.
Perhaps it comes in a little more, not too hard, not as hard as it came the first time. It might lessen a little, hopefully.
It does. You're absolutely right. It gets easier.
Yeah.
Because your mind is getting stronger. You're developing skills. And so now you're dealing with it with skills that you didn't have before. The first time that you saw it, you got to look all over the place. Now that you know where it is, you can just go right after it.
Yes.
And so the skill of the second trial is much better.
Yeah.
Okay, if we saw what was going on, and in fact, that's what education is all about, is learning from our mistakes.
Yeah. Yes.
If we make a mistake and don't learn anything, we start repeating that same mistake, and now it's a habit, and we begin to live our whole lives making that same mistake over and over again.
Yes.
But now we're waking up with Anapanasati, and so when we make that mistake, we can say, wait a minute, let me look at that.
Yes.
Let's check that out. Let's see what's going on. Here's a bad feeling. Why does it have to wind up in anger?
Yes. Yeah.
And then we recognize it doesn't have to.
No.
That we can, in fact, change very, very deep patterns of the mind.
Yeah.
With sati, because we're sharp enough to catch the stuff really early before it's gotten out of hand.
Yeah.
Or out of the mouth, at least.
Yes. Yeah, it usually doesn't come out of my mouth too much. I keep silent, at least. So
all right. So now we've gotten that far. That's a level of sati that a lot of people don't have.
Yeah.
They don't recognize they're yelling until somebody tells them they're yelling.
Okay.
And then maybe not.
Yeah.
So now what we have to do is to catch the yelling on the inside.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when do we catch that? As soon as we see it, as soon as we recognize it, we
Mm.
could say, as if it were a pet, down boy.
Yeah. Yeah. That's harder for me to do. It's yeah.
Well,
I
that's right effort. That right effort, if we wake up enough to have the effort to say, down boy. And
yeah.
we can also use it to take a deep breath. That helps a lot. To
Yes.
take a deep breath and literally back away
Yeah.
with that thought, aha, I am not that, or aha, I see you, or aha, I am disassociating
Yeah.
from that.
Yeah. Mm. Yeah. Right. Mm. Yeah. So this is, uh, does this have anything to do with the precepts or uh, making a
Yeah.
behavior pattern out of things or
Yes, exactly. It does 100%.
uh-huh.
And here is the way that it does it. If you go into the situation, and we'll just keep using the example of going into the employment office, and you are afraid and uptight and on edge or whatever, then we're much more likely to engage in false speech.
Mm-hmm.
However, if we're cool, relaxed,
Yeah.
focused, sharp, know how we feel, etc., like that, then with the mind unified in that way, we would naturally, just naturally, because of the state of our mind in, not engage in abusive speech or tell lies. I mean, that's one of the things that's their business, is to catch people telling lies.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Okay,
Yes.
but if you're completely honest with them, then
Yeah.
that makes their job a whole lot easier or tough, depending upon the way you look at it. If they're really intent on finding that lie,
Yeah.
okay, but make sure that you don't, because you've got nothing to hide.
Yeah.
Why? Because you've got nothing to fear.
Yeah.
So you
Mm-hmm.
see how that happens? Okay, that when
Yes.
people are afraid, they want to hide, and when they want to hide, they're not sure of the answer to the question. And
Mm.
so they'll say something a little wrong, and then now they're in danger of getting caught, and they know it. And so now they're feeling even worse.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And when the mind is sharp and focused, we can fill the forms out with dignity and not worry.
Yeah.
I mean, literally not worrying while we're filling them out, because in fact, I learned that, by the way, many, many years ago, in the sense of, in America, everybody generally, when they're working, has to fill out a tax return, which is the years, and everybody wants to cheat.
Yeah.
And so the question is, where can I find a way of cheating, and what can I say? And then after we mail it, now we're feeling bad, thinking the IRS is coming for us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And in fact, a much better thing is, and people are beginning to figure that out, is to go to a service, give them the paper, let them do it correctly, and let them find the loopholes and the lies and all of that kind of stuff, and let it be their problem.
Uh-huh.
Okay, it's not my return anymore.
Yeah.
It belongs to the accountants now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, so in that regard, we can um, find ways of giving ourselves misery, tell lies, and do all kinds of wrong things because of our greed and our anger and our desire and our ill will,
Yeah.
coupled with ignorance.
Yeah.
But
Mm.
when we get wise to that stuff and come out of it, now we can get paperwork done joyfully and
Mm-hmm.
handle situations easily.
Yeah. Yeah. This is interesting. I kind of know it in a way, but it became so
It's
obvious
actually in
now.
the sutta. It's actually in the suttas.
Mm-hmm.
And the way that it talks about the suttas is, this is, by the way, a really good understanding that um, that the Buddha looked at the Eightfold Noble Path differently than the way that it's listed in the literature, because the literature has divided it out into Sila, Samadhi, Panya.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Sila, Samadhi, Panya can then be arranged so that it's Panya, Sila, Samadhi, which is exactly the way that it's presented for most places. But in practice, it's not that way. We take that division out because we need some of the items of wisdom and some of the items of samadhi, and make them work together so that we could get a new kind of samadhi that, in fact, right effort and right mindfulness or sati really should not be part of the samadhi part. They should be part of the wisdom part,
Uh-huh.
because those four items work together. And the Buddha talks about it right there in that sutta, bringing about the mind that is unified. These four items of right view, right sati, right effort, run and circle around each other to create and manufacture and promote and allow the skill of right attitude to be developed.
Yeah.
Once we have those four things, now the mind can be fit, unified, happy. Okay? Now that the mind is unified, naturally our behavior is going to be pure enough that we don't tell deliberate lies, because we don't need to tell any deliberate lies. I'm good as I am now. I don't have to fix myself by telling a lie.
Yeah.
Okay. Generally,
Yeah.
doubt
Mm.
that we have a lot of doubt, that must be bad, and so we do a lot of judging.
Mm-hmm.
But when the mind, why? Because doubt arises from the feeling of confusion, and we generally don't like it.
Yeah.
But when the mind is pure and clear, we can see the thought or the feelings of confusion arise, and we can turn that then into investigation, or curiosity, I guess, is the better way of
Mm-hmm.
saying it.
Mm-hmm.
All
Yeah.
right, confusion turns into curiosity
Yeah. Mm.
with wisdom and joy. All right, so now that we know that we actually can begin to control these feelings,
Yeah.
and that we have them under control, so that the mind is in fact in a unified state. Why is it unified? Because it's free from all the distractions.
Yeah.
What are distracting thoughts or feelings? Would be fear, anger, worry, frustration, anxiety, all of that kind of stuff.
Mm.
But we're free from that, so that means that now the mind is unified, it's whole, and we can refrain from, for instance, if we're in this position of being comfortable and happy, and we don't need any money, then the likelihood that we're not going to go into anyone's wallet and take any money out of it.
Mm.
We just wouldn't do that. I'm already okay. I don't need that.
Mm.
But when people are actually in need of the money and they want the money, that's when they will go and do things that they know is wrong,
Yeah.
because they need it.
Mm.
But if you don't need anything,
Yeah.
then your behavior is pure.
Yeah, I have one question about alcohol and drinking around this. Can you say something about that? Where does that come in this whole thing?
All right, I can say quite a lot about it,
Mm.
and I don't just to dance around the issue. Um, that
Because money is one thing. One needs money, one needs some certain things to a certain level, but alcohol one doesn't really need.
Precisely. So when the drunk, or let us say not the drunk, but the recovering alcoholic who is in AA after a while and he's been dry, he will still have language like, I need a drink.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't need a drink, but
No.
he needs something and he's not sure of what it is, but his whole habit pattern of life has been going after a drink
Mm-hmm.
in order to feel good, or at least get rid of the feelings that we have when we don't have a drink.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's something that really needs to be addressed for the alcoholic, is how can you get the benefits of alcohol without alcohol? What
Mm-hmm.
are the actual benefits of it? Because many people, in fact, can be, let us say, they can work diligently and free themselves of one addiction only to go to another addiction and become addicted to something else
Mm-hmm.
without wisely figuring out what is it that's worth addicting to. Because some things are really worth addicting to.
Mm-hmm.
Laughter, joy, being in this present moment, the Eightfold Noble Path, and the Eightfold Noble Path and the Four Noble Truths can become addicted. In fact, that's kind of the point. When we become completely addicted to the Eightfold Noble Path and the joy that it brings, that's it.
Yeah.
Become completely addicted to the Buddha Dhamma.
Mm-hmm.
Become really enthusiastic about it. Because one thing
Yeah.
about this addiction is that it doesn't have any unwholesome benefits,
Yeah. Right.
or,
But
or, or lack of benefit. Everything is beneficial. It doesn't have an unwholesome side, to where
yeah.
alcohol has several unwholesome sides.
Yeah. But also that's one thing, but also this the food thing, overeating and celibacy and all those other things that are not uh, maybe unnecessary. One can live without sex,
Most of the people
but not
who
without food. Yeah.
Most of the Western people who go into Buddhism and they reach these topics, they are bringing a lot of Western baggage with them.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you just used words like celibacy. That's baggage.
Mm-hmm.
That word is baggage.
It's all over in the where people write about in the what's it called?
Buddhism
The
has
precepts and
nothing to do. Buddhism has nothing to do with celibacy.
okay. Mm-hmm.
The teachings of the Buddha has nothing to do with celibacy. What it has everything to do with is freedom.
Mm-hmm. So would that be freedom then?
Well, the problem with people who practice celibacy is they do it when they're not free.
Uh-huh.
And
Okay.
celibacy is not a freedom for them. It winds up being a dark secret prison
Uh-huh.
or worse.
Okay.
Okay. Celibacy is something that actually has an authority from the outside.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
In the sense of um, uh, the church uh, is it's a requirement or a vow of celibacy, but a vow is something that you're telling other people.
But isn't that something when you become a monk or a nun? Isn't that something you have to do, to not do?
Well, the all right, in the sense that the precepts change. From
Mm-hmm.
the five precepts to the 8 and 10 precepts, it changes this way. In the five precepts, it's kame su michacharawe ramani sakabadam samatiyami. And what this means is to not interfere with other people. Kame su michachara, which is uh, uh, is stated as sexual misconduct. But whoever did that translation was obviously Western.
Okay. Uh-huh.
All right. that it changes, though, from the concept or the idea of uh, not disturbing other people. So if he sees her and she's already attached, and there's many ways for her to be attached. It's very rarely for a woman to be completely unattached. Let me tell you some of the ways that she could be attached. She could be attached to her family. She's too young or too old. She's attached to or betrothed to a husband or married to him. She can also be in an organization like she's in a nun in the Catholic Church. So she's taken vows to do that. Or um, it could be because of some employment. But there is reasons where people are not available. And so if you go to that person wanting something from them that they cannot give you because of their circumstances, you're causing yourself and the other person grief.
Mm-hmm. Is that the
Now
same?
let's look at. Go
The
ahead.
opposite. Is that the same with men, women, and women
Right.
nuns from
Except
that?
that men will lie to you and tell you they're unattached.
Okay. Okay. Uh-huh.
Okay. Women are more honest about that. The nurses will say, I'm a nurse, leave me alone.
Okay.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
So now let's look at it in the sense of how that precept changes into the 8 precepts. And here the word is stated this way: Brahmacharya Vairamani Sakabadam Samatiyami. Now, Brahmacharya basically means that we're going to be living like the Brahmins, or very, very high class, or at the top, which means that we're not encumbered. So this is the place of Brahmacharya Vairamani. Now, some people will translate that, depending upon the way that they translate Brahman, is the home of the gods. Like, for instance, the Brahma Viharas is the home, translated often as the home of the gods. Okay, so you could say then that the Brahmacharya, actually the word acharya has the quality of a teacher. So this would be like living according to the teachings of the gods, very high, which has again mostly the quality of freedom. All right, now what are we free from? Well, the first thing that we're free from is a wife. Okay, and when I say free from the wife, I can also say free from the girlfriend in the sense of free from wanting things from her on a consistent, regular basis. And I can become free from that. Okay, it doesn't necessarily mean free from the desire, because the desire is actually nothing but a good feeling that's followed by I want it, but I don't have it. And I want it. Okay, which gives rise to a story. And the story is one of my favorites. I love this one. And it's because it's between Ajahn Sumedho and Ajahn Chah, his teacher. And that the story is that they're in a ceremony, the Keten ceremony, where the young women are all dolled up as best they can. And I won't go into the details of the Keten. We'll do that later. But Ajahn Chah nudged Ajahn, or he was actually just Sumedho at that time. He wasn't quite an Ajahn yet, I think. And he asked Sumedho, what do you think? And he's, pointing out all of this. And Sumedho, Johnny on the spot with Paticca Samuppada, says, I like it, but I don't want it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That is actually the best expression of Paticca Samuppada that I know of. And just that many lines. I like it, but I don't want it.
So that's not objectification then?
Pardon?
That is not objectification.
No, no,
No.
the objectification would be they're bad.
Okay.
The objectification would be these girls are all dolled up because they're sinister and dangerous.
Uh-huh. Okay.
Okay, and it actually denies the actual feelings of the monk. I actually do like what I see.
Or the wanting might be objectification, right? But not the liking, or
Well, the liking is the actual of the feeling and the acknowledgement of the feeling.
uh-huh.
Because a lot of people have the idea that I'm not supposed to like it. That's sensual desire.
Uh-huh. Okay. Now I
Bad,
see.
bad, bad me, bad thoughts. I should
Ah,
not be thinking about that.
okay. Now I
Okay.
see. Yeah.
All
Okay.
right. No, we have to recognize these thoughts with wisdom. And the wisdom is to know the thought, I like it.
Mm-hmm.
Now that we recognize that I like it, now we can actually go a little into recognizing what is it that we like. And then we can say, well, never mind. I like it, but I don't want it. It's
Mm-hmm.
like going into the grocery store and picking up something that's bright and shiny or got a beautiful label or something. And then when we read the package, we can set it back. I don't want it now. I liked it. I picked it up and I looked at it, and now I don't want it.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Yeah.
so with the actual practice of paticca samuppada, that winds up being not an issue of celibacy, and celibacy is all about denying something that's natural.
Mm.
Here we're not denying anything that's natural, we're looking directly into it, examining it correctly, and figuring out that that which I want may not be beneficial to me.
Mm-hmm. Is it the same with the dislike? Is that the same as the liking?
Exactly so.
Oh,
Now
oh,
we don't like, okay, so we like the girl at the what? Now we're back to, I don't like it. Now we're back into the employment office again.
yeah, exactly. It's the same principle, right?
It's
Okay.
exactly the same thing.
Okay.
All three feelings,
Mm-hmm.
all, it's the same principle.
Yeah.
That's why when I asked Bhikkhu Buddhadasa about it, it says, oh, that means there's six feelings. Unwise liking and wise liking, unwise not liking, and no, he said no.
Okay.
He says, no, it's not the three of them with a switch in between so that it winds up doubling it. It's only adding a new ingredient, and that's the fourth kind of liking, or the fourth kind of feeling, which is wisdom.
Oh.
The wisdom feeling is the one that knows what to do based upon the feeling of liking. And
Mm.
if there is no wisdom, then it's going to go off in the wrong direction due to habit.
Mm. Okay.
But
Mm.
when we bring wisdom in, so now we can say there's actually four kinds of feelings. There
Mm.
is a wise feeling and three kinds of unwise feelings.
Mm. Okay.
All right. But that greatly works with the idea of, so let's go back to the precepts.
Mm.
The precepts that are there actually come, you can see it this way in many places, but this one sutta that I'm referencing is where it is again, where we have right speech, right behavior, or right action, and right livelihood. Now, right livelihood is a natural outcome of right action and right speech, so that we wouldn't be engaged in selling of arms or liquor or any of those kind of things, because we know that dealing with that is harmful. But also in our dealings, we're not going to be doing things like promoting or doing a bait and switch, say it's this and then give them that, which is common in business. Okay, so we don't. If we're going to be in business, it's got to be highly honorable business, not normal business of the marketplace.
Mm-hmm.
All right. But now let's go back and look at the fact that in right speech, that is one item of the precepts. which is Musawada Re Ramani, and all of the kinds of speech are in the sutta, are not put into the precepts, but three of the actions are. And so let's look at the right speech. In the sutta, they talk about several different kinds of speech to be abstained from, and that would be one, telling lies, directly being deceitful. Another one would be using harsh language. And another one would be using malicious gossip.
Mm.
All right. Now, if we look at it like that, malicious gossip is almost always the kind of gossip that A is telling B a story about Mr. C in order for Mr. B to have a lower opinion of Mr. C than he would ordinarily have.
I can see how I easily fall into that when I get angry or, at someone, the employment office or some person or something. Then I start doing that. That's a big one for me.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right. So in the case here, an example would be that whenever I'm talking to a student about another teacher, I have to be very careful of my speech, or I'll fall right into gossip. Boy, I know everything wrong with that guy. You ought to hear what I know about him and his technique. And so, but with the mind clear, I can always say that, wait a minute, he's a Dhamma teacher. He knows the Dhamma. There may be some differences, but let's go and do an examination and look at it from that direction, and we'll probably come around to an agreement.
Yeah.
And therefore, I do not have to trash another teacher in front of me, the student.
Yeah. And not the employment office either. One doesn't have to do it with them either, right?
Exactly. So we don't have to say, well, my friend got a good thing. Why didn't you do that with her? Or you go home and say, boy, that employment group, wow, they're terrible.
Yeah.
Be careful when you go over there. They're a bunch of maniacs. All right. So it's storytelling is basically what we're meaning by gossip. However, we can talk in gossip in a compassionate way that's not malicious, so that we can think about, how can we help Susie to come out of her bad feelings? And now it's wholesome.
Yeah.
But it's still gossip.
Yeah. So gossip, there is wholesome gossip.
Any time that we talk about a third person, we can assume that that's gossip.
Yeah.
And so we have to make sure that it's wholesome rather than malicious gossip, because it's got nothing to do with breaking the precepts. It's got to do with breaking one's mind.
Yes.
So yes. You've got to have a broken mind.
It's really painful to do it. It's really, really painful to do it. Yeah.
All right. So what they did was they took what the Buddha was teaching out of the context of this is the result of one who has a unified mind, one who has the samadhi, one who has the unification. And they put it out as a list of rules for children. Saying, you're going to be a Buddhist, you got to do this, that, and the other thing.
Yeah, it's confusing. It really is confusing to read about it in the wrong way. I've been thinking a lot about those things. Why do they write like this? What is what, and so on. So it's difficult to know.
In the old literature, we can find these rituals had already become ritualized by maybe the 2nd century BC. And so the literature is there. And there is a ceremony that is done every Buddha Day, which is now, let us say in the U.S., they do it on Sundays because the Asians have taken over the 7-day calendar as opposed to the quarter moon. Because that one rotates. Some days you have 8 days and sometimes you have 7. Okay. So Uh, on the Buddha Day, or one put is the way that they say it in Thai. Uh, they do this ceremony, and everyone is involved with it, but it's normally one of the monks who will do the recitation. And that the precepts are the second thing. The first thing is taking refuge. That's when they do Dhammam, Saranam, Gacchami, or excuse me, Buddham, Saranam, Gacchami, Dhammam, Saranam, Gacchami, Sangha, Saranam, Gacchami. Always in dative case. Buddham is not Buddha or Buddho because that would be nominative case, but Buddham means I take refuge in the Buddha. So it's a dative case or objective case, you'd say in English. I've been in Greek, so I use their word for it, dative. um, the the precepts, along with the taking of the refuge, is a formalized way of saying this is what it's like to be a real Buddhist. Okay. But they're not giving any indication about how to get that.
No.
Because most people can't keep the precepts. It's only when the mind gets really pure and purified and fit for work that we, in fact, can keep the precepts. Which means now we're finally a Dhamma dude. Or do that. In other words, now we're really Buddhist. The label that is put on that is the Sotapan, or the stream enterer. But along the way, or along the process of the Buddha, comes that insight and inspiration that, as it deepens, becomes enthusiasm. It becomes, in fact, our addiction. So when we become addicted to the Buddha Dhamma, that's when we finally have arrived to taking full refuge in the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha. Okay, now we've got a really wholesome place for our addiction. And in there is great delight. The delight of the drunk. Now, I know that sometimes the Sufis get drunk on God. Here we're just drunk on the Dhamma.
Yeah.
And I can say drunk because it's that inebriating. I mean, I'm lost in it. That's it. I got nothing but Dhamma left.
Yeah.
All right. So that's taking the refuge. And by having that mentality of being completely addicted to the Dhamma, that means that the mind's going to be sharp and organized, drunk at this level of mindfulness, so that we become addicted to being awake. And that's when we come to the state then of actually being able to keep the precepts, because we're not actually keeping them. In fact, we're not doing anything. We're just sitting here being happy. And that keeps the precepts.
Yeah.
Non-doing keeps the precepts, because all of them is abstaining from killing and harming, abstaining from taking things that don't belong to us, abstaining from molesting the young girls who look beautiful, abstaining from the young handsome man, molesting him.
Yeah.
So when we abstain from that, that means that we've got a better addiction.
Yeah.
The addiction to the Dhamma now is better than the old desires that come up from the hormones or from the instinct. So, like many people who say, oh, if you follow the rules, you'll get the results of following the rules. If you be a good little Christian and follow the rules, you'll get into heaven. Or for the priest, you've got to be celibate, or we're going to throw you out, or at least change your employment location. So, so actually, this rule about when we think about celibacy, we're talking about a rule that people have to learn to keep.
Yeah.
When we think of the Dhamma, we think of it as the natural outcome of a pure mind.
Yeah.
So the cause and effect is backwards, but also that's the way with the other precepts. Now, one last thing about that before we go, and that is the issue of alcohol. Alcohol is not mentioned in this sutta about right speech and right action and right livelihood. But there is something about it. In the Patimokkha, which is actually the shorthand list of rules, in the Patimokkha, it is listed as an item that needs to be confessed. And part of the confession also has to be is to give the half-empty bottle back. You can't keep it. There are also some medications, even today, that the alcohol is medicinal. It's not drunk for intoxication purposes. And yet there is some kinds of food that can actually be considered food that if you eat it, you'll become intoxicated.
Yeah.
And I'm not talking about brownies. I'm actually talking about a brown rice that I know of, that in Asia, this actually goes back to the time of the Buddha. But if you leave rice to ferment completely, and then you cook it under pressure or under a lid, then what you get is something that when you taste it, you cannot taste anything but the alcohol. It is just raw alcohol. And if you have 2 plates of it, you'll know it. You can't get up.
Okay.
And I have seen that served to monks at several wats. And they always laugh when they take just a little of it and pass on home. And I actually had someone grab my arm when I was taking out, and he wait a minute. But it was when I tasted it that I understood what he was talking about. So, anyway, alcohol in and of itself is not a big issue, but it is something to be confessed with the idea that I'm going to stop doing it. But if someone is an alcoholic, in fact, they have various wats in Thailand that are designed around particular addictions. One of them has become quite famous because they have a cure for heroin, which is really mighty difficult to beat. And that wat has a regime, but there's also 1 or 2 wats for alcoholics here in Thailand. Naturally, the monks would want to deal with that kind of thing in a loving environment to help the guy out of his alcoholism.
Yeah.
Where in the West, people are really kind of on their own.
Yeah.
Even with organizations like AA, then the government can say, well, let AA do it. The government says, well, let the monks do it. And everybody says, yeah, that's a good idea. Okay. So there's a difference between, actually, there's several differences. One is using it for medicinal purposes. Another one is to eating it because it's part of a food preparation. And then there is the actual drinking of alcohol because we know it's alcohol and that's what we want. And then there's the full-blown addiction. So while we can see all of these little stages along the path, and that is hopefully we can catch it early, so that we can take that craving for the alcohol into direct knowledge. That I don't have to crave the alcohol, that I can get the benefits that I thought the alcohol were going to give me directly. And that may not work 100% right now or this week, but it certainly starts a pattern so that over a course of a week or 2 or a month or so, I can actually decide in every case it's better to not drink right now.
Yeah, I think definitely so. Yeah,
Mm.
yeah,
Learn to enjoy being completely sober.
yeah,
In fact, that's what the Dhamma is about, is being addicted to even higher sober than,
yeah.
most people, because most people go around half asleep anyway.
Mhm.
So, as as the point though, it's possibly a good. It's well thought out that they did add that fifth precept, but that precept itself is actually Sura Maria Macha Pamatidana Vairamani Sakavadam Samatiyami. So if we do that, the parse, and look at the Pali, what we find is Sura is about the same thing as beer. Maria is about the same thing as wine. Uh, and matcha is hard liquor.
Mm,
And then pamatadana is the abstaining because it leads to hindrances. You
mhm.
can actually see the dana at the end of the word.
Yeah.
It gives crazy.
Yeah.
Right. Uh, so um, the way of then looking at this sutta is that that's put there for the general population because it's beneficial for them to know that heedlessness through alcohol leads to dukkha,
Mm,
that it naturally does. But what they really don't emphasize very well is that no, actually, dukkha led to the use of alcohol. And so it got into a spiral or a cycle.
mm, mm. Yeah.
Now, in Eric Burns' transaction analysis, they've done even a deeper analysis in the sense of what are the games that drunks play? In other words, what kind of transactions do they have while they're inebriated?
Mhm.
One of the games they play is drunk and proud.
Mhm.
That's where the barroom fights come from. People who would never get into a fight,
Mm,
but because they say the inhibitions are lowered,
mm,
now we're ready to go. So what we're saying is that alcohol helps to both put us to sleep and to uncover the old system. So
yeah.
it actually, alcohol makes us more of an animal,
Mhm.
which means we're more likely to cause ourselves anguish and trouble. But why did we ever think that alcohol was going to be beneficial for us? Well, because we liked kind of the feeling in the beginning of it.
Mhm.
A little bit of alcohol feels good.
Mhm.
And then the mentality is, well, more alcohol must feel better, but it doesn't. And
Yeah.
so they say, well, maybe I need a third to top it off so that I'll feel really good. And now we're getting actually drunk. Ah, so the question with alcohol is, when can we stop?
Mm,
The answer for Alcoholics Anonymous will say, before the first drink.
mm,
But in fact, with many cases, it would be after, okay, let the child have a little bit, a taste. Okay, you cannot eat the whole pie, but you can
mhm,
have a spoonful. All
mhm,
right, just a drink. Okay, you can have one beer, and that's it. And
mhm.
if we could put that kind of limit on it, then that's quite beneficial also to limit it, so that it doesn't cause the harm that the excessive amounts of alcohol do, because that actually follows along very well with the Vinaya in the sense of alcohol can be used as a medicine or it can be used for food. And so a little bit of alcohol is there's no problem with it. It's when it becomes excessive, when we become addicted to it.
Mhm.
Okay, so now that you're no longer addicted to alcohol, let's give you a new addiction, something
Mhm.
that's wholesome, beneficial, something that you can really get into, get really drunk on, the Dhamma.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm.
So this is how those precepts work, all in general. The
Yeah.
generality is that we get it backwards. We
Mm.
think that the precepts is going to bring about the unification of mind.
Mm.
No, the unification of mind is what brings about the
Mm.
precepts.
Is it similar with food and those things? Uh, the same.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. Oh gosh, there's so much about food
Yeah.
that you see alcohol becomes more of an adult problem trying to deal with bad feelings of child's feelings with an adult issue. Food, no, we get the full brunt of that one from the childhood on.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Here are two examples that I know of are very detrimental.
Mm-hmm.
One of them is you got to clean your plate. You got
Yeah.
to eat what I gave you.
Yeah.
The other one is you can't have your dessert until you eat your vegetables.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay?
Mm-hmm.
That's actually teaching things that don't need to be taught.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that it teaches is the law of karma. If you do something good, like eat your vegetables, then you can have something bad, like chocolate cake. Basically, no, that's backwards. Now that you've done the good of eating your broccoli, now you can have the reward of eating your broccoli by having the cake.
Yeah.
Because everybody knows if you ate the cake first, now you've got the leads on this horse, and you can say, "No, I don't want to eat the broccoli now. I've already had the cake, thank you." And so that's the reason that they serve it like that to the kids, without giving the kids the freedom to experiment. And
Yeah.
so we wind up eating the vegetables, not because it's food, not because we like it. In fact, we don't want to eat it because we don't like it.
Yeah.
So that means that we're doing what we were told to do. We're being bribed.
Mm.
I know in some countries bribery is against the law, but it depends upon who's doing it. So
Yeah.
there we are. We're being bribed. Do something you don't want to do.
Mm.
And how we're being bribed is by then you get something that you want.
Yeah. Mm.
A better thing to do would be to work with the child to get them to taste it, to
Mm.
play a game with it, to
Mm.
say, I bet I could eat one pea. Can you eat just one pea?
Mm.
Okay. And so we can make a game out of it to get the child to want to eat
Mm.
a particular food that if we as an adult, the question is, why does the adult want the child to eat that particular food that the child doesn't like anyway? All right, so with food, we wind up with this as an issue when we grow up,
Mm.
and so we
Oh,
wind up cleaning our plate,
yeah.
and we wind up rewarding ourselves with
Yeah.
cake
Yeah.
when we
Yeah.
don't have to.
Um,
Now, as an adult, we can see why the parents wanted us to eat vegetables, and so we'll eat them because we like them.
yeah. Mm.
And now, because we like the vegetables, we can avoid
Yeah.
eating the things that we do like that we know are unwholesome for us.
Yeah.
So food is very much like thought. We have to decide what's wholesome and what's not wholesome,
Yeah. Mm.
and we don't have to eat it all. We can start watching, start being mindful of both the belly and the taste. But you see, sometimes people get into the habit of eating really fast. They're not really even tasting the food. They've just gotten into the habit, and so they wolf everything down.
Mm.
And so one of the things that we would do then
Mm.
would be to eat slowly.
Mm.
Put the utensils down between bites.
Mm.
And as we're swallowing, we can then watch, we can actually do the swallowing with the mind down to the belly and ask the belly, have you had enough yet? Because the belly will tell you when it's had enough, but most people are not listening to the belly at all. They're listening to the tongue.
Mm. Yeah.
And they're in the bad habit of stirring that food and getting it ready to shovel back in, and they're not even paying attention to have they had enough or not.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And so when we bring mindfulness in and begin to recognize that these old habits that we have were
Mm.
done in childhood, we can begin to take a much better control over our own diet.
Mm. Yeah.
Now, I recognize that we've been into this for a while, so I'm actually giving you kind of a mini version
Yeah,
of
but that's great. Yeah.
eating.
Yeah. Mm. But
But I
I
really
think
like your
we
questions.
never,
You have,
what?
go ahead. I
No, I
said I
think we
really like
never
your
talked
question.
about this. Not the food, I think. No. So that's good.
Well, I'm using a combination of things. I'm
Mm.
using suttas, and I'm using my knowledge of psychology and how kids are raised,
Yeah.
and putting those things together so
Mm-hmm.
that we can begin to understand how all of that stuff got started, so we can apply the food uh, reflections, apply the food reflections to
Mm-hmm.
what we're eating right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so later we'll go over the food reflections themselves, but just to get you started, the
Yeah.
way to watch is, have you had enough at the end of this bite? Is this
Yeah.
enough?
Yeah.
And you may say, for right now, and you set the plate down and say, I'll eat it later.
Mm-hmm.
And then later you might come back and eat it, or you might not.
Mm.
But it's okay to interrupt your meal like that. Take 10 minutes off if you want. Become satisfied and full, and then you may say, "Well, I really did have enough, and I don't need any more."
Yeah. Yeah.
You don't have to eat all the food that you fix,
No. No. Mm.
and then you can consciously start fixing less food.
Yeah.
Because if you fix less food, then there'll be less food to eat.
Yeah.
As they say, the diet begins in the grocery store.
Yeah. Mm.
If you don't buy it and take it home, you can't eat it.
Yeah. Right.
So at the grocery store, that's the time to be mindful of the food that we buy.
Yeah.
Let's buy wholesome food.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
That's
Well,
great.
I've enjoyed. I really enjoy our conversations.
Yeah, me too.
Okay.
Thank
See
you
you
so
later,
much.
Agnes.
Yeah.
Uh huh. Bye bye.
Bye.